welcome. So what we're doing is we're slowly going through one chapter per month from A Course in Miracles. We're up to chapter 7 today, and this is going to take us about 3 years to get through the whole thing, seeing how we skip August, and it took 3 times just to get through the first chapter. But we'll do one chapter from now on each time. I could start by saying this is an important chapter, but I might have to say that for every chapter. There's no chapter that's not. One of the things that you're probably beginning to see in the Course by the time we get up to 7 is the beginning of some redundancy. It says the same thing over and over and over again, but it has to say the same thing over and over and over again because we're so dense that we have to hear it many times in order to get it. But it's not just a matter of getting it, it's a matter of taking it in and really letting it change your life. And there's a part of what we're going to look at today that'll be really important for us to take in and allow it to change who we are. I think I'm a little loud. Can we turn it down a little bit? No? All right. So let's start. I have an outline for you. All have the outlines, right? And I've just picked out some passages that really struck me as being really important to go over. And I'll read some of these and then stop and talk about it. This chapter begins by talking about oneness, which is a very important concept in the Course in Miracles. The oneness should be taken literal. There's only one mind. We are a part of that mind. Maybe we should just say something about how we got into this messy situation that we're in. Hi, you guys all settled? Hi. I just came back from doing a lecture tour in Florida, and I think at every place that I stopped to do the tour, somebody asked what is kind of the one unanswerable question, which is why? Why did we ever decide to leave God? Why would we be so insane as to do that? So let me address that question a little bit to start with. We've addressed it here already, but I think a little bit of a new reflection on it. Actually, we did it, but then I mean we literally chose to leave home. We're all prodigal sons and daughters. We actually did it because we were afraid of God. And you might say, well, why in the world would you ever be afraid of God? We're afraid of God because we're afraid that if God wins, we lose. That is, on the ego level, we have this decision. We have free will, so we can decide if we want to run away. So we have to kind of run away. We could think of this place as kind of being a hiding place from God. I think a lot of people do experience it as a hiding place. It doesn't work. You can't really hide from God. You can only try to hide from God. Harry Belafonte in the 60s had a popular song that was called "There's No Hiding Place Down Here," which is actually an old black Negro hymn that they used to sing. Once I went out to hide my face, I rock right back, no hiding place. There's no hiding place down here. Anybody remember that? Yeah. So you can't hide, and we all know it. We're all really experiencing split minds. And the Course is really trying to get us to completely overcome that. I mean to go all the way home. Now, to go all the way home means we have to get a total attention on the kingdom. And I'm going to read this passage here in a minute that's going to say that. So that's why this is a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work to be able to make this switch. All right? The good news is that we can begin to make the switch, so that we're working on it. That's why if you're doing the Course, there's a workbook. We got to do this workbook. This is an essential part of this whole process. Studying the text is really important. I often think that if the Course in Miracles had only consisted of just the text, that we wouldn't be very many students, and it would take it would just become more of an intellectual thing than it would be a practical application process. So you may or may not have started at the beginning of the year. It doesn't make any difference whether you did or not. You can start anytime. You could start on December 30th. It wouldn't make any difference where you start along the way. But to be engaged, because it's what it is, it's an alchemy. And it should lead you to a lot of insights. I hear a number of you, I hear Don over here and I hear Brad over here using phrases like, oh, I got this idea, right? So that's wonderful. Then the next thing to do is to let that idea become something that's not just in your head, but is also in your heart, and even deeper than that, it's in your gut. I mean, it's in your gut so that it kind of gets cooked and churned and turned around, and it begins to work. The Course is also a very radical philosophy. Radical means root, and so like a radish. So it's a root. We're going all the way back to the beginning of the beginning of the beginning, where this decision to leave home, to leave God was made, and then undone, and then the right choice is made to begin to get the mind thinking. And actually there's a couple places in chapter 7 where it talks about thinking with the mind of God. Now that seems like quite a feat, to be able to think that you could think with the mind of God. And I know I've pointed out to you before, there's this wonderful sentence at the last sentence is lesson 52, which says, and this would be a good one to memorize. It's good to memorize a lot of sentences from the Course, but would I not rather join? Now this is, you say to yourself, this is an exercise you say to yourself. Would I not rather join in the thinking of the universe? That's the only time the phrase the thinking of the universe appears in the entire Course. Would I not rather join in the thinking of the universe than to continue to obscure, and that's a very important word, that word obscure. To obscure all that is really mine. The whole kingdom of heaven is yours. That's what the gifts of the kingdom are about in this chapter. Then to obscure what's really mine with my pitiful, meaningless, private thoughts. So we can spend some more time talking about what our pitiful, meaningless, private thoughts are. We're going to be looking at some of those in terms of this chapter. But once you look at the pitiful, meaningless, private thoughts, and then we give them up. So that does get us back into bringing the mind in line with the mind of God. And last time, as Jasko was just saying, we took a moment to reflect on the life of a man who lived the Course better than anyone I ever met. It's wonderful he was our first teacher, because he not only intellectually was able to tell us all about this, but he lived it unlike anybody ever lived it. So it's wonderful that our first teacher able to apply it so completely and thoroughly as Ken did. So let's look at the first column here. Yes?
John, I just want to say that I'm new to the Course.
Okay.
I've been doing the lessons, and for anyone who's new to the Course, Amy Torres teaches it online.
Right.
And I just want to recommend it because I got up to around lesson 40-something, and I started to feel myself kind of step away from it. And when I discovered that she was teaching it, I went online, and I'm still doing it. I think I'm on lesson 136 today. So it really helped me to stay in the Course with the lessons, and she very lovingly supports you through the lessons by explaining some of it. So I just wanted to put that out there to anyone who's new and is thinking about doing it, or is doing it and maybe is losing interest.
Right. Now, Amy is a very good resource in that regard. I was just with Amy in Florida, and we did a little video on the happy death, right? You can look that up. David?
Ken also has
Yes.
tapes on the workbook as well as the text.
Right.
I mean, he has a million tapes, but
Right.
for anyone interested in that, pretty good way to supplement what you read.
It's a wonderful supplement. He had not quite finished the the textbook when he passed, doing but verbally it's done. So the foundation is going to complete it. I mean, they're going to go ahead and get it out in complete book form. So there's a lot that they can do. He'd been working on a book since 2000 when he moved out to California. At the time I had a session with him just before he moved out, and he told me that he was working on a book on Freud, and he read the entire works of Freud as a way to start doing this. He didn't get it done, and I think they're thinking that they may not be able to finish that one because they're not quite sure where that was going to go. But certainly the text they can finish. They're also, the foundation will stay open. There are 4 wonderful teachers out there that can continue the work, and maybe more than 4, but certainly there are 4.
Do you know if the Lighthouse newsletter will continue?
I don't know that. Whether the Lighthouse newsletter will continue, I think it will. I think it probably will. Yeah.
I went on the website, and the newsletters are available up till 2013. So, I mean, we're already in February, so it might be too soon to tell.
Well, right now what they're doing is they're working on a collection of attributes to Ken. If you want to write, if you study with Ken and you would like to send in a tribute, you can do that. But you have to do it before February 14th. Interesting day to choose. And you have to do it in writing, not on the internet. Okay. That may have to send a letter. Right. The next issue of Miracles Magazine, the March-April issue, which will be going to print about the end of this week, is totally dedicated to articles about Ken. And his picture will be on the picture was he had last month will be on the cover, and etc. We're going to run off extra copies of that issue in case there's a demand for extra copies. Okay, let's go ahead. Don has done a lot of work on this next issue, making it look good. All right, let's look at the first paragraph on the left-hand side. To be in the kingdom is merely to focus your full attention on it. So this is where it gets hard. Because we got to focus our full attention on it, right? There's a line in here where it says you cannot be totally committed sometimes. But let's don't go getting on ourselves and making ourselves feel guilty if we don't have a total commitment and if we don't have it all the time. The idea is to be moving in the right direction and not to be beating ourselves up just because we don't necessarily feel like we're, and don't worry if you don't feel like you're getting these, especially with the workbook lessons. If you think, well, I'm not really getting the lessons right, well, you can do one lesson for more than one day, but don't stay forever on a lesson either. You could get stuck, you could just never get one done. One is one of the hardest lessons because it involves such a complete change of mind. We're trying to see things in a totally different way. But it's good, I think, that it starts off with a kick like that we're going to really get you to turn your mind around and start looking at things in a wholly different way. Back to this quote. As long as you believe you can attend to what is not true, you are accepting conflict as your choice. Is it really a choice? Now, this chapter talks a lot about conflict. And so we're going to have to go into some conflict here more in a moment. It seems to be, but seeming and reality are hardly the same. Now let's say something about seeming. That phrase, seeming reality, appears a lot. So what we're actually experiencing in this world is what we might call seeming reality. It seems like we call it reality. We call it reality TV, for example, which, as we all know, is pretty far from reality. But the seeming reality of the world, and yet at the same time that there's a seeming reality of the world, I think one of the reasons that you're studying the Course in Miracles and that we're all here is because there's a place down inside every one of us where we know it's not true. I mean, that something is missing. Right? There's an unfinished element somewhere, and we want to find out what that is and then be able to correct it. So that's inside everyone. Everyone is a split. Every one of us in this room is a split, right? And there's no one who's not a split. The idea is to try to get that split to not be such a split, right? So we're giving more and more and more attention to the mind of God, and less and less and less attention. We're learning how to give less attention to the ego, more attention to thinking with the universe, thinking in line with the mind of God. So it's a progressive, as long as you're in time. As long as we're in time, it'll be a progressive process that we're involved in. Eventually, this kind of leads us, though, to a mystical experience. A mystical experience is really the experience in which you step outside of time. I mean, whenever you feel like you've had this, what you might call a mystical experience, it's usually because you've sort of disconnected from the story and the drama, the soap opera of everyday life, and you, for a moment at least, you get to see into something that goes beyond this, and that's very, very exciting. What's exciting is that you can see beyond this. I'll give you a quote. This quote is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think it's a perfect description of a mystical experience. I think I can do it. It goes like this. This is in his book Nature, which was really his first book that really made him famous, right? Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed in the blithe air, and uplifted into infinite space, I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. That's an important line. I am nothing. I see all. Now, how do you get to see all? You get to see all by being nothing. In other words, that there's no longer an ego attachment there at all. I am nothing, I see all. The currents of universal being circulate through me. I am part and parcel of God. Now that's exactly what the Course in Miracles is saying, that it's possible for us to be able to reach this state which Emerson is describing, and it's interesting he has this experience in nature, which is a really good place to have the experience, right? But then he sees all. It just something happens. I'll share with you briefly. A good friend, Jerry Pagano, I don't know whether anybody knows Jerry or not, is a Course in Miracles leader in northern New Jersey, and he had a brain operation. This was a week ago or so, and he called and he was really wanting to talk. And so we had a really nice conversation a few days ago. And it's interesting what brain operation will do to you. He had a mystical experience. You know, sometimes we only have these mystical experiences when something really extraordinary happens to us that takes us out of the ordinary. So we're no longer ordinary. It's something extraordinary. And he saw it, and he's wanting to talk just to share this incredible experience of this great sense of love that suddenly pops into you when there's no you. Or in other words, to say that is that there's no selfishness. You know, that there's not the sense of individuality. There is this wonderful sense of connectedness, which occurs, and a connectedness with everything. I had that similar experience once in the hospital when I had encephalitis, and as I was coming out of the encephalitis, I just loved the nurses to pieces. I just, whoever it was, because I just saw that they were trying to take care of me, and this wonderful that they were giving me, demonstrating this love, and what a great profession they had. I thought that they were doing this, right? But that's not the way of the world. The way of the world is that we're conflicted. And we find conflict, and we look for conflict. And we actually want to find conflict in the world, which is why this is an insane world. Right? So, did I finish that paragraph? Let me finish it. I'll start off the seeming again. It seems to be, but seeming and reality are hardly the same. You who are, now R is in quotation marks, you who are the kingdom, right, are not concerned with seeming. Reality is yours because you are reality. This is how having and being are ultimately reconciled, not in the kingdom, but in your mind. That's where the reconciliation has to occur. The reconciliation has to occur within your mind. Now, this is a very important point, which we're going to find a lot more to talk about in this chapter, because one of the first steps in understanding the Course is to understand you have a mind. And not only do you have a mind, but you have a mind that can be changed. So you can change your mind so that you go from the insane mind to the right mind. And the Course says, you do not realize how incredibly powerful your mind is. And in fact, there's a place in here, and we'll come across it again maybe a little bit later, was this is the most powerful thing that there is in the universe, is your mind. And the ability to change your mind, but we got to be willing. That's a very important point. You know, the Course talks about what it calls a little willingness. It just needs a little willingness in the beginning to get it going. But then it also talks later about what it calls a greater willingness to really go ahead. A little willingness to start it, but a greater willingness to go ahead and do what we're really being asked to do. What we're being asked to do is to stop finding problems, stop finding the conflict, stop seeing the error. And this is really hard to do, but we can do it. Okay, so let's go to the part about oneness on the right-hand side. Can we get, I think I keep getting feedback. Chris around? Okay. The creative power of God and His creations is limitless, but they are not in reciprocal relationship. You communicate fully with God as He does with you. This is an ongoing process in which you share, and because you share it, you're inspired to create like God. Yet in creation, you are not in a reciprocal relationship to God, since He created you, but you did not create Him. So, this is the process. The process is God creates us. We don't create God. It moves in this direction. But the ego, of course, would like to create itself. And it would like to, I tell the story, remember playing King on the Hill, like when you were a kid, right? So there's this time when the ego would still like to really assert itself. And so we have to watch all the time, every moment of every day, with the people you work with your family members. Just notice if you feel like you're being attacked, or if you feel like you want to attack. And then just, a good Course student would catch, you catch it. The quicker you catch it, the better. I mean, the quicker you catch that insane thought. The insane thought is that I could say something right now of what I'm really feeling, and you think it's what you're really feeling, but it's the ego that's really feeling it, right? Which is insane. Yes, Barry. Oh, one of the things we want to do is to use the microphone if we can. Also, if you don't mind, for Larry's sake, if you're especially on the side backs, would you stand when you ask your question? If you don't want to do that, keep in mind you're being filmed.
He can stay where he is.
Barry can stay where he is because you can get it. All right.
I'm new to God.
Yes, I know. Okay, let it get him on. All right. Thank you, Lillian.
I'm new to God.
You're okay, I think.
Yeah. How do you communicate with God?
Okay, good question. The first step is really just being open. It's just being open to this possibility of being receptive. The Course, the lesson 49 from the workbook says, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. So there's really never a second. And I've used in the past the illustration of the GPS, like you're always being given a direction. So God speaks, but we got to be able to. You can't hear if you got an interference pattern going on. That's what the Course is trying to do. The Course is trying to help us to stop the interference, so that we can hear.
I hear a voice within. Is that God speaking?
It may be.
How do I know?
Well, first of all, there's two simple ways to know. Number one, what does the voice say? By that I mean, if the voice is an angry, attacking voice, the Course in Miracles, the ego always speaks first. So, and in the situation where I would make a decision, the ego speaks first. So what you want to do is you want to listen to what the ego says, and then don't go there. So then the choice is to now listen to what the Holy Spirit says, which is the Holy Spirit is really understood in the Course as the voice for God, right? So now I listen to what the right choice is. But this is why patience and waiting is really a good idea. And any time that you have to make a decision or say something, and there's a possibility of an attack that's in there, or a conflicted response, wait. And then make the right choice. But the thing is that you always know what the right choice is, just we always don't know what the wrong choice is.
Is the right choice one of intuition, or you just know that the ego is speaking to you, something tells you it's the wrong thing to do?
Well, the ego is, keep in mind, the ego is never happy. The ego is always probably going to be on the attack, right? It's always going to be conflicted. It says if the decision leaves you with total peace, you know it's the right decision. So does this decision leave me feeling peaceful? Then it's the right decision. If it doesn't leave me feeling peaceful, if it leaves me feeling conflicted, then I want to look for the right decision. Eric?
Microphone?
Yeah, okay, let's try to do the mic.
Please leave the mic with the...
Lily Katz, we're going to let you be a runner for us. That's for you, what you get for sitting on the front row.
I think of it like the reaction is the ego and the response is the Holy Spirit.
That's
so
good.
The reaction is always going to come first.
Right.
And then it's a matter of perhaps taking a deep breath or stopping until what we're reacting to is what we don't want, and it's already happened, so it makes no sense. It's just a temper tantrum, basically. There's nothing coming from the reaction. But when we can feel that reaction, which is usually fiery or often fiery or strong or hot, and take that deep breath, or realize we've fallen out of happiness. We're in a lower state where we think something's lacking and we're trying to lash out to try and get what we think we need. But that stopping and getting to where you can respond, because in that responding you understand something's happened, and if there's some way to respond, you do, or you notice that there is no response other than perhaps a prayer or something like that.
In fact, it's very often the best response is no response. Right. So that's a part of the important part of the course is letting things be what they are. Another one of I probably every time I do a talk I quote, "Let him be what he is, seek not to make of love an enemy. Let her be who she is, let the situation be what it is." And then it's so much more peaceful, just let it be. You don't have to get your way. The ego has to have its way. I mean, the ego is going to want an outcome of its own sort, but it never works. That's the sad part of the thing. It can never work.
It's never right and happy.
It's never. You can't be right and happy. Right, exactly. Yeah. And who's got the mic? You want to pass it to Shanti over here in the corner? Way over to Shanti.
Could I just say something?
Sure. Yeah, you
Since
already
I
had your
have
hand up, so you got the mic. You might as well do
I
it.
have the mic. I find that when I feel really crappy about myself, it's usually the ego talking to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because you're going to feel disassociated. Right. All right. Pass it on to Shanti in the corner over there.
No, I just wanted to say one thing. I want to add a little bit. That's all.
All right. Oh gosh.
I think we were talking about how do we know that what we're hearing is coming from where we want it to come from, right? Okay. I think we want to add one other thing. It's not only how we hear it, how we feel about it. We feel good, we feel bad, because if we ask to see it differently, we might not enjoy what we're asked to do. But the most important thing, it seems to me, in the rule, is that it's not only how it affects me, but how it affects everybody I'm associated with in that situation that I'm asking for help. In other words, the people are as important, each and every one of us is important as I am. That's the addition, because it's never just about me, it's about us.
Yeah. Good, Shanti. Thank you. Okay. Why don't you Brad, why don't you just hold on to that till the time comes, okay? Let's go to page 2. 2. And I'm really going to concentrate on the parts that I've got here that are bolded out, okay? As God's creative thought proceeds from Him to you, so must your creative thoughts proceed from you to your creations. Only in this way can all creative power extend outward. And essentially what our creations are loving thoughts. You are created out of God's loving thoughts. So don't get too caught up in creation as something like what we think of creation as being in this world. And then going on. So this section talks about creation. Creation is the extension of Christ. It's also the extension of our spirit. As we extend our love, that is our creation. Jumping down to the next highlighted, bolded area. God's accomplishments are not yours, but yours are like His. They have to be like His. He created the sonship, and you increase it. You have the power to add to the kingdom, though not to add to the creator of the kingdom. So this is really exciting, because I think actually the more you do this work, and this is why it's beautiful work, and that's why it's wonderful work, is you should be progressively falling more in love. You're really falling in love with life itself. This is the very opposite of depression. The depression being that you're hating yourself, really, and you're not being responsible, and you're not finding meaning in the life process, and you're not knowing how to do it, how to find any meaning. As we move this other direction, which is that as the love grows, then it's natural that it extends to everyone and to everything and to every situation. There's nothing which is exempt from your love. And that again was what was so beautiful about Ken. There was no one who was exempt from his love. And not only that, but he had this amazing ability to give his full attention to whoever it is that he was with. I mean, for a moment, or on the phone, or at a workshop, or whatever it was, there was this, you had the feeling that one of my friends who only met him once, Dr. Robert Weltman, said, I only had like a 5 or 10 minute conversation with him once upon a time. And he said, "Oh, how I love that man." Because, how could you not love somebody whose love is pouring out to you? And I think that we have to think that this is exactly what happened with Jesus as well. That Jesus was just really, the historical Jesus, was literally all love. And people felt it, and they saw it. And that's why that so many people, of course, gathered around him. And then why the authorities got so upset with him, because he was obviously attracting a lot of attention, and it was people were gathering around him, and he was in danger of being able to get the people into a revolting situation, which of course is not what he would have done. All right, he was not here to bring a sword, but to bring the love, but the people felt it. So that's what just happens with us. So anytime that I'm not feeling love is another way to think about this. So I want to look and think, why am I not feeling love? And why is the ego asking for my attention at this point? So going on down. So God created the sonship, and we increase the sonship. That's what's really nice, the whole idea that you increase it. And that's what joy is too. And joy is talked a lot about in the Course. Is one of the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God in the Manual for Teachers of the Course is joy. And joy is this feeling of union, the feeling of connection. If you think, what has brought you the greatest joy in your life, right? It is that sense of, like, the greatest joy that we usually have is the whole falling in love. Whether it's romantic love, or with a pet, or with whatever it is, just that feeling makes us high, naturally high. Okay? So going on further with this, let's go to the right column on page 2. The ego, on the other hand, always demands reciprocal rights because it is competitive rather than loving. So by definition, the ego is competitive. So you want to think, if you see some sort of competitive thought coming up inside your own mind about something, you want to put somebody down for some reason. There was a thing, several years ago, I wrote an article for Miracles Magazine that was called Forgiving the Good. Remember Forgiving the Good? Forgiving the Good means, somebody has some real success, let's say, a friend of yours, and they make some sort of step or accomplishment that you were hoping to make, and they get something done, they get some money, they get whatever it is, and are you really happy for them? Or are you jealous? Are you wishing that it was yours? So can you do that? Can you not be thinking in competitive ways? All right. The analogy I want to use them is three different people can be standing on a street corner. A friend drives by in a new car. One person will be happy for the friend. One person will be angry or jealous of the friend, and for the third person, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, it just is what it is. It's not a matter of attacking or doing anything. It's just letting the world be what it is. That's why we don't need to be getting upset about whatever it is that we're seeing. Yes, Ruth, you're right there with the mic.
Yes. So I was reading something about this yesterday. Since we're all connected, the other person's joy is my joy.
Good.
So.
Right. As it should be. Especially when we're really connected, then that's like in a loving situation. If it's your child, for example, then you get more excited than if it's somebody else's child, right? No, I'm not saying you. I'm you in the plural, the sense of the thing, right? Right. Okay. Going on down. The following is obviously Jesus speaking of himself. I gave only love to the kingdom, because I believe that was what I was. What you believe you are determines your gifts, and if God created you by extending himself as you can only extend yourself as he did. Only joy increases forever, since joy and eternity are inseparable. Now think of that. Only joy increases forever, since joy and eternity are inseparable. There's a little problem that kind of arises when we talk about the kingdom of heaven that I don't think we can really understand, because to use a word like increase implies something that happens in time, right? And yet the Course is very clear that when we talk about heaven, we're not talking about time. We're talking about something that's happening outside of time. So this is why I don't think we can really quite grasp this, because it's a time-bound concept. But we can accept it, nevertheless. We can understand increase in this life. We can understand increasing joy. I don't understand quite how it works in heaven. But it's implying at the same time, it's increase, which is a way for us to understand it. But then another point it says, but it's not really that. Because it's not like something that happens in time. Does that make sense? It's like forever there. It's an eternal process. But we who still live in time need time concepts to process something increasing. That's the best way that I can explain that. Okay? What you believe you are determines your gifts, and if God created you by extending himself as you can only extend yourself as he did. Only joy increases forever, since joy and eternity are inseparable. God extended outward beyond limit and beyond time. This is beyond time. And you, who are co-creator with him, extend his kingdom forever and beyond limit. Eternity is the indelible stamp of creation. The eternal are in peace and joy forever. Kind of answers that, right? Okay. Let's go to part 2. Oh, okay.
So the statement, what you believe you are determines your gifts, sort of lit something up for me.
Right.
It's how do you determine what your gifts are?
Well, we already know what your gifts are. I mean, if we're talking about love, for example. So your gifts are love. And that's the gift that you give. However you give it. And there are multiple ways in which that we can give love, whether it's giving attention, whether it's giving resources, whether it's giving, just being present. All right. Let's go to the laws of the kingdom, section 2. What you project or extend is real for you. This is the immutable law of the mind in this world as well as in the kingdom. So in this world, as well as in the kingdom, what we project or extend is real for you. So there are two processes of extension or projection. In this world we call it projection. The ego projects. The mind projects. So we want to think, what is it that the mind is projecting? And the projecting of the ego is always going to be conflict. The ego is always looking for conflict. It's always looking for difference. It's always looking for separation and segregation and finding things to be making judgments about. That is to stop that. We've done stop it, so I won't do stop it again, but to stop looking for conflict. It's just like we're waiting for somebody to screw up. We just can't wait for them to say the wrong thing. This especially, and this is why you have such unhappiness, for example, in some family situations, let's say, for example, right? One member of the family is just, the husband just waiting for the wife to say something silly. The wife is just waiting for the husband to screw up somehow or another so that there can be a jump. This is not a happy situation. This is not a happy place to live in. Or the kid, or you're waiting for the kid to screw up. Leave them alone. They're going to screw up. But and constantly engaging in the process. It's a trick to find out how do you provide guidance without using a heavy hand. And how do you have the loving response at all times and in all places? Right? There's a way to do it. Right? Essentially, what God does is God leaves us alone, but He keeps giving us the right answers. But keeps giving us the right direction. It's just like a good GPS system always gives us the right direction, but it doesn't scold us. It just keeps giving us the right direction. I just was on this trip I just made to Florida. My GPS in my car does recalculating when you go off, and I had a different GPS system in the car that I had in Florida. It didn't recalculate. It would just automatically give you the right direction. If I made a wrong turn, it would just instantly. It wouldn't say recalculating. It would just tell you what the next right step is. Well, I thought that's the way God works. God doesn't actually say recalculating. He just tells you the right step. Here it is. And as we said with Barry here a moment ago, God's voice is speaking to us all through the day, so it's always there, always providing direction, but it doesn't yell.
It's like God doesn't see all the steps.
Well, right. Thanks, Dana. God doesn't see wrong steps because there are no wrong steps. That's another thing which is really, really important. We've talked about that a little bit here before, because even the wrong step's a right step. And it's really important to understand that, because even when we go off course, we're still being given the right information, and we will eventually get home again. That's why you can't fail. But you can be unhappy in time by making the wrong choices. This is trying to get us into a place where we're so consistently making the right choices that we don't have to go through this experience of unhappiness, what we call guilt. Guilt is really the big place of tremendous unhappiness. Can somebody get the mic back to Don there in the back row?
I just appreciate what Dana just said, and I just want to go back because it jumped out at me when you read it before. It's on page 1 under oneness, the last sentence. Yet in creation you are not in a reciprocal relation to God, since He created you, but you did not create Him. And, I've just been able to understand some ideas around if I think I've disappointed God, like I'm creating God in that context, and to get really clear that God is unchangeable. So as I'm doing my life here in time, And whatever I think I might have done or didn't do or could have done or should have known to do, and what I think God is sitting somewhere deciding that I didn't do it right, that I'm creating God.
That's right.
And I see that concept in a lot of people that I work with. They're creating God. And I think I just think that last sentence in that segment could be its own class, as many pieces of the course could be.
Okay.
But I thought that was just mentioned, and it kind of just brought me back to that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, it'd be impossible to disappoint God. And a wise parent doesn't get disappointed when the child doesn't make the right decision. Right. We just have to let them be, even though we see them making wrong choices. Let's go to top of 3. Did we do this? No. Outside the kingdom, the law that prevails inside is adapted to what you project you believe. This is the teaching form because outside the kingdom, learning is essential. This form implies that you will learn what you are from, what you have projected onto others, therefore believe they are. In the kingdom, there is no teaching or learning because there's no belief. There's only eternity. In this world, in time, we're really... Pardon?
There's only certainty, and that's
What did I say?
eternity.
Oh,
And there's a very important distinction, and I think...
I just saw it wrong.
No, I don't mean that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this is the way you wrote it. I mean, there is only certainty.
Right, there is.
Distinction between belief and certainty.
Stand up, Shawnee, so you can... You're not on the mic, you're not on the...
I'm very hot on this particular part. The word belief is very commonly used, and the word certainty doesn't always follow it, but you have to do that to yourself. You have to ask yourself, how much do I believe, and what that I believe is certain? And you'll really see you're running into a brick wall, because most of our beliefs are beliefs that have no validity at all except that we say so. Think about it. Think about the fact you constantly are seeing the word belief. And notice your own belief system, because we function on our beliefs. And our beliefs are not necessarily reflections of the divinity of God.
Right.
Because that's certain. And when can you be certain? When someone tells you? No, figure this out, because this is the work we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, honey. So another way that we could talk about that would be knowledge, the difference between belief and knowledge. Right. So belief is very weak. You can believe all kinds of things, and you can change your beliefs. That doesn't make it true. The Course is very clear in talking about what it calls knowledge. Knowledge is literally knowing with God. And it totally different from perception. When you read the word perception in the Course, keep in mind that you're talking about what happens with the body's eyes, or how we pick up on whatever it is that we're picking up in the world. Knowledge transcends all that. I'm sure I've told you the story, but I'll tell it just one more time. Carl Jung being interviewed on the BBC with Dr. Lawrence van der Post, and Van der Post asks him, Dr. Jung, do you believe in God? And he says, believe in God, no, I know. So know is much deeper and much more profound. Did you want to add?
Brief comment.
Okay. All right. If you can get the mic over to our...
Could you put the microphone closer to your mouth?
Yeah, just a brief comment. I was recently introduced to a minister who said, well, in my BS, that's belief system. And that was the way she referred to it. And I thought it was so brilliant. Everyone has their own BS. That's belief system. And it just clicked. It was so perfect.
Yeah, that is good.
Just wanted to comment.
We'll read one more section here, discuss it, and then we'll take our break. Also on page 3, going on down, How can you, who are God's meaning, perceive yourself as absent from it? You can see yourself as separate from your meaning only by experiencing yourself as unreal. This is why the ego is insane. It teaches that you are not what you are. So it teaches that we are the mask, we're the personality, we're the self that we create, not the self that God creates. This is why, again, when it comes to the releasing of the ego and the whole death process, this becomes very scary on the ego level, because we don't want to let go of that identity that we think that we are. And yet the truth of the matter is, it's only when you let go of that identity that you think that you are, that you have this relief of finding out who you really are, which is something quite beautiful, namely the child of God, or son of God, or daughter of God, or whatever phraseology you want to use. And there couldn't be anything better than that, right? Okay, the bell signals that we take a 10-minute break.